And ladies and gentlemen, you've made it. You have one last speaker. I'd like to introduce our last speaker of the day, Martin Mikeln, who's a co-founder at Eventum. Martin, thank you.
Hello, my name is Martin. I am the CEO and co-founder of a project called Eventum. And today I'll talk about wisdom of the crowd, decentralized oracles, Nash Equilibrium, and how all of that fits into a picture, and how can we extract the truth from the real world and bring it into the decentralized ecosystem. So that will be the first part of our of my presentation, wisdom of the crowd and Nash Equilibrium. And I'll actually start in 906. When a famous mathematician called Francis went to a West of England fat, stock, and poultry exhibition. And one of the fun things you can do there was to guess the weight of an ox on a stage. So you bought a ticket, you put in your vote, you send that there to the jury, and if you were the closest one, you got a reward. Well, Francis went to the organizers and said, after the event ends, can I get all the tickets? And he got 797 tickets. He averaged out the result, and the result was off by 1 pound. So even the most knowledgeable butcher and farm boys, they couldn't guess what the crowd together guessed. So the crowd can be really intelligent. Well, if you ask Friedrich Nietzsche or a famous French writer, Gustave Le Bon, they say we are basically sheep following each other's and not having a mind of our own. And that's really, they're not that far off, because crowds are only wise if you have all those three requirements. So they have to be diverse, they have to have their own opinions, even if they're really eccentric and subjective. They also have to have independent votes. You don't need to, you can't know what others are voting, and there also needs to be a decentralization. What means is that you have to have a local expertise that you draw on and cast your vote. So if you have all those three requirements, crowds are actually very, very intelligent. And those overestimates and underestimates, like we saw with an ox example, cancels each other out. And there are numerous examples of how this works. For example, USS Scorpio in 1968, it disappeared. Instead of asking the salvage experts, they asked a bunch of random people, from those salvage experts to sailors to wives of those sailors. And they say, we will take the average and we'll try to find the submarine. They found it 200 yards away from the prediction in the 20-mile search radius they had when they started. Or the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show. We all know that the Lifeline, when you ask the audience, is the only one you can trust. Or the jar of beans, when a professor asked their students, can you estimate what is the number of the beans? And they were really, really close. Or this picture, which was taken 74 seconds after the Challenger exploded. There were 4 main companies that you can blame for. They were all constructing a very important pieces of that space shuttle. Well, the crowd basically knew who to blame in the few hours, because the stock price of the Morton Teocol dropped by 100% more than all the other stocks of those other 3 people you could blame fell. And actually, in over a few months, they figured out who was the one to blame. There were no indication of who to blame, but the crowd in few hours figured out that is the one to blame, and they were right. So that's what's called a cognition problems, where you can just take an average and the crowd is usually wiser than any expert in that crowd. There are also other problems and other very similar, very interesting examples, like when Thomas Schelling said, put 2 different students in New York and said, can you find each other? And in most cases, they find each other at the Grand Central Station at 12 noon. They could find each other at any other place, but that was the focal point. That's what we call now a Schelling point, that they came together. So that's what's called a coordination problem. So we saw a cognition and coordination problem. And then there is also a cooperation problem. That means, how can I get something wise out of the crowd, which is very self-interested and maybe distrustful? That's basically how the real world works. And the example of that is how we pay taxes. If you have a centralized governance, like an IRS, they will make sure, they will punish you or incentivize you to pay the taxes. And that's why we all pay taxes, and the country can actually build a missile defense system in roads, even though I don't need to pay it, right? If you have a decentralized system, you need what's called one Nash Equilibrium. So what's a Nash Equilibrium? It's a very simple strategy optimization method. So I am in a Nash Equilibrium, and the system is in a Nash Equilibrium. If if my strategy is optimal, and I also take into account other people's strategies, if those strategies don't change. So there actually, for example, this is a very famous example. Me and my girlfriend, we want to go home and have some fun time, or we stay at work and be productive. So it's all good if we both stay at work and be productive, or if we both go home. But it's not good if I go home and I have nothing to do and she's at work being productive, and I also want to be productive. So there are two Nash equilibriums. We are both happy with both results. What we want in a decentralized system is to build one Nash equilibrium, which basically means there's just one optimal strategy, and then we can have a wise crowd that can work together even if they are not interested in being fair. So I'll go back to the wisdom of the crowd ideas, but I'll talk about decentralized Oracle first. So what is the goal of the 21st century? Most of my friends, they say Bitcoin or whatever coin they're investing lately. Well, it's data. When you're driving a car, being at a concert, being a sport match, reading some news, it's all about data around you that's very, very, very valuable to a lot of companies out there. And it's not just any data, it's real-world data. More than 25% of all the data will be real-time in nature in the next 7 years. And that's really on exponential growth. So real-time data will actually dominate the world. It will be 100 billion revenue per year business in the next 7 years. So the real question and the real problem is what's called information overload. It's just getting too heavy and too difficult to extract the truth out of the information. That's why we have problems like fake news, basically affecting Trump's election, Brexit, valuation of companies, and everything else. And this is costing US economy $900 billion a year. So it's really about how can I filter and verify information. And that's why I think we are one of the biggest shifts of 21st century is how we are moving from the information age, where we were just digitizing and collecting everything, to a verification age, where we want to verify and filter everything. We're on the verge of the second biggest shifts. That's why we are here, right? We are moving from the centralized to the decentralized world. And if you combine all those two big shifts together, what you get is a real-time world having problem of how to actually filter and verify information, and the decentralized world. How to connect those two is one of the biggest missing blocks we have today. You solve that, but why it's called oracles. Let's say Ari Paul from Block Ventures, that he thinks that this will be one of the single biggest crypto innovation of 2018. How to have these oracles? Well, we have them, Oraclize. They are providing a secure connection between the real world and the smart contracts. Or Chainlink, very similarly. They're a blockchain middleware. So they guarantee that the data we have in the real world goes to a smart contract without being affected. Or we have Augur, which a lot of people before me talked about future market predictions. You have some shares that you sell and buy, and you bet who will be the next president. So we do have oracles that are trying to solve that problem. The real problem, though, is that those oracles like Oraclize and Chainlink, they're data transport oracle. They don't say anything about the data itself. Can I trust this information that this news is fake or not? Can I trust this information from a soccer match? Can I trust this information about the weather? I can't, because there is no way to actually do that. And Augur is very good in what it does, but it's not actually real time. It doesn't act as a source of data. It doesn't have independent votes. You can't use it to bring the real world information into smart contracts. So the real solution here is to actually build a decentralized oracle which can extract the truth from the real world and bring it to the smart contracts, to the decentralized ecosystem in real time. And that's what we are building, and we believe we are one of the missing blocks. It's called Eventum. It's a real-time decentralized oracle. And if I now connect the dots back to the wisdom of the crowd problem, we are actually using wisdom of the crowd cooperation problem. We build a system with one Nash Equilibrium, which actually means that we design a system where everybody incentivized to provide the truth. And now you can connect the real world and the decentralized ecosystem. So it is a platform where anybody can get paid to provide this data, and then the developers, they can get any data they want, and it's much cheaper, faster, and most of all, they can trust it. How does it work? It's very similar to how the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show works. So you want to know, is this news fake or not, or what's happening on a soccer match. You don't want to ask one guy, he may be just saying something else or has some different agenda. You ask 10, 100 of them, and you incentivize those that are part of the consensus. And you punish the other ones. And then the faster the answer, the bigger the reward they get. There's also built-in dispute and review mechanism. So it's a very simple mechanism, but it ensures that people will provide the right data. We actually build that and are proving that for months now. So what you can do with it is actually you can detect fake news. That's what we're doing with a company called FactMeta. We are providing sports data and leveraging, removing the costs of millions of dollars of mistakes being done by companies like Sportsradar. So they're not actually our enemies. We're working with them how to provide the sports data to a $1 trillion industry of betting. We are working on different use cases of how to train AI algorithms by a wisdom of the crowd principle in real time without margins in a decentralized fashion. We are working with Skybet to utilize 165 million frequent viewers of esports tournaments to provide this information and to fuel fantasy leagues and betting platforms and news sites. These gaming companies are locking in their information, but you have 160 million viewers that have access to this information. If you have a system to utilize that, you can do that. We are working with different companies to solve problems like medical second opinion, live retail intelligence, price predictions, and many more. And we believe we can be one of the building blocks between the decentralized companies like Btoken, Power Ledger. They all need a source of truth. And Eventum can provide it, or at least be a part of the solution. And so we were talking about cooperation problem and how Eventum works, but what about the cognition problem? So that was the first wisdom of the crowd idea, if you remember the ox and the submarine example. So what we are now developing is an Eventum prediction mode, where you have a product that you want to sell, you don't know what the price should be, or you're adding or removing a feature and you want to estimate the price. That's what we are doing right now with Deloitte by building an internal price prediction tool where you want to sell a product and you don't know what the price should be. You ask a crowd via the Eventum. So now we are basically solving the first cognition problem with that. And that, for example, one of the use cases, the image is all trimmed and everything, so you can't do Google reverse image search, and the whole crowd was not aware of what the product is. They had to guess what is the price of that product, or what would the public buy this product for which price. And this is the outcome of the event, and they were off by 0.088%. They were more than 99.9% correct in guessing what's the real value of that product. And no, they didn't guess just 50, 50, 50. They were putting in votes from 5 to 150. Just the crowd itself was very wise. So it's very technical how it works, but it's basically averaging out. We're a platform. We're an open source foundation. We have a token behind that basically works as a fuel, as in an Ethereum platform, for example. It's a very complicated system, but we use blockchain as a core system, and we develop our own network, uses Hashgraph to process that and build the consensus. We have just-in-time masternodes, so I would love to talk more technical if you could visit our booth, and I would love to discuss that. But most importantly, we have a live alpha network for 4 months. We've onboarded 130,000 people. We have hundreds of people doing events every day, and I would like you to join it. So today at 7 p.m. there is one event, and tomorrow at 7 p.m. there's going to be another event. Today there's going to be a speech recognition problem that people will be solving, and tomorrow is going to be a fake news problem. So you can just go to the alpha.eventum network and try them out. It's going to be around $13,000 of reward for each event. That's how the alpha Eventum network looks, with different kind of events where we are testing them with different companies. That's an outcome of an event, and you can see how the majority was built and how the wisdom of the crowd actually works every time. And most of all, if you are developers, please come talk to us. We have 9 new open positions right now. We have a big team of advisors and, like I said, big team of developers. And like I said, we are hiring for all positions from UX to UI to backend engineering. We are all about product and building a real company. So we are basically incognito building all of that for 8 months before we even went to show anybody. And yes, please contact us. We are not doing an ICO or anything like that. We're a privately funded project that want to be an open source, a building block that connects real world and smart contracts. Basically finishing our private sale next week and going live into beta stage in the next 3 weeks. So thank you.